Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded street, surrounded by the constant noise of a world that demands you know exactly who you are. We spend our entire lives building a fortress around this person we call me, decorating its walls with achievements, labels, and possessions. Yet, in the quiet moments of the night, a subtle unease often remains. This feeling of incompleteness is not a sign of failure, but an invitation to look deeper into the nature of existence. The Buddha taught a concept known as Anatta, or non-self, which suggests that the source of our heaviest burdens is the very identity we fight so hard to protect. By understanding that there is no fixed, permanent soul at the center of our experience, we can begin to find a profound sense of inner peace and untethered freedom. To understand why we cling so tightly to the idea of a permanent self, we must first look at the biological heritage that shaped our minds over millions of years. Our ancestors survived in a world of constant threat by developing a brain that is exceptionally good at creating boundaries between what is me and what is not me. This evolutionary process was never designed to make us happy or enlightened. It was designed to keep us alive and reproducing in an often hostile environment. From a psychological perspective, the ego serves as a survival mechanism, a narrative center that organizes information and predicts dangers to ensure our physical safety remains intact. We are the descendants of those who were most anxious about their social status, their limited resources, and their standing within the tribe. This deep-seated instinct creates a persistent illusion of a solid core that must be defended at all costs against any perceived slight or change. When we feel insulted, ignored, or threatened by the opinions of others, it is this ancient survival software reacting as if our very existence is at stake in the moment. However, in the modern world, this mechanism often backfires in ways that cause immense mental distress, leading to chronic stress and a painful sense of isolation from the rest of the world. We find ourselves trapped in a never-ending cycle of craving and aversion, constantly trying to bolster a self that feels inherently fragile and incomplete. The Buddha recognized this fundamental tension and pointed out that our suffering arises not from the world itself, but from our desperate attachment to this illusory center of being. We treat our passing thoughts, our changing bodies, and our temporary reputations as if they were permanent fixtures, yet they are in a state of constant flux from birth until death. Think of a river that appears to be a single entity from a distance, yet the water flowing through it is never the same from one second to the next. Our lives are much like that river, a continuous flow of physical and mental processes without a fixed owner or a permanent controller. When we begin to see this truth through direct observation, the heavy armor we carry starts to feel unnecessary and even burdensome. We realize that the self is not a thing, but a dynamic process, a dance of causes and conditions that have come together for a brief moment in time before dispersing again. This realization is the beginning of true resilience, because a self that does not exist in a fixed way cannot be permanently damaged or destroyed by external circumstances. By examining the root of our identity through the lens of evolutionary psychology and Buddhist wisdom, we can see that our sense of me is a functional tool rather than an ultimate reality. This shift in perspective allows us to step back from the emotional turbulence of daily life and observe our experiences with a sense of calm clarity and equanimity. We no longer have to be slaves to our ancient instincts or the stories our minds tell us about who we are and what we deserve. Instead, we can learn to navigate the world with a light touch, recognizing that the perceived boundaries between ourselves and the universe are far more porous than we once believed possible. If we look closely at what we call the self during our daily lives, we find that it is composed of 5 distinct streams of experience that the Buddha called the aggregates. The first is the physical body, which is a collection of elements borrowed from the earth, constantly changing and eventually returning to the source from which it came. We often think of our body as me, yet we have very little control over its internal processes like aging, sickness, or the simple beating of the heart. The second stream is feeling, the basic tone of every single experience as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These feelings arise and pass away like weather patterns in the sky, yet we often let them dictate our entire state of mind and our choices. The third is perception, the way our mind labels and recognizes objects based on past memories and cultural conditioning. We see a tree and instantly name it, missing the raw and vibrant reality of the experience because we are blinded by our own mental categories and concepts. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, the complex array of thoughts, intentions, desires, and habits that drive our behavior in the world. These are the stories we tell ourselves about why we are the way we are and what we must do to be happy. Finally, there is consciousness, the quality of awareness that knows these other 4 streams of experience as they arise. When we sit in meditation or practice deep mindfulness in our work, we can observe these 5 aggregates as separate but interconnected processes moving through time. We notice that nowhere among them is there a permanent soul or an unchanging ego sitting in the driver's seat of our lives. This is the heart of the analytical approach to the wisdom of Anatta. By breaking down the illusion of the self into its component parts, we see that the person we think we are is more like a symphony than a single instrument. There is music being played, but there is no one person who is the music itself. This analytical clarity is a powerful tool for breaking the cycle of suffering that haunts our modern existence. When a difficult emotion like anger or grief arises, we can observe it as a mental formation rather than identifying with it as my anger or my grief. We see it as a temporary guest in the house of awareness, coming and going according to certain causes and conditions beyond our direct control. This objective observation creates a vital space between the stimulus and our response, allowing us to act with wisdom rather than reacting out of blind habit or fear. This process of deconstruction is not meant to leave us feeling empty, cold, or nihilistic in our outlook, but to reveal a deeper kind of presence that is not tied to the small and fragile ego. We begin to realize that our true nature is not a limited thing that can be defined by a name, a social security number, or a job title. Instead, we are part of a vast and interconnected web of life where every action has a ripple effect on everything else. This realization brings a sense of profound relief to the weary mind. The pressure to maintain a perfect image or to constantly improve a flawed self begins to dissolve into the background. We are finally free to simply be, to experience life exactly as it is without the heavy burden of ownership or the need for constant validation. In the modern world, we are constantly encouraged to build, refine, and promote our personal brand as if our very worth depends on how clearly we can define ourselves to others. This cultural obsession with the self is a direct extension of our evolutionary drive for social status. Yet it has reached a point of exhaustion and deep psychological fatigue. We are told that the path to happiness is found by looking within to discover a hidden, authentic core that is waiting to be expressed through our choices, our careers, and our consumption habits. However, the more we search for this solid center, the more elusive it becomes, leading to a profound sense of disillusionment When we realize that our identity is often just a collection of borrowed opinions and fleeting desires, this constant pressure to be someone unique and successful creates a background radiation of anxiety that colors almost every aspect of our lives. We compare our messy internal reality to the curated external images of others, forgetting that they too are struggling to maintain a facade of permanence in a world that is fundamentally unstable. The teaching of Anatta challenges this entire framework by suggesting that the search for a true self is actually the search for a ghost. When we look into the mind for a permanent owner, we find only thoughts that arise without an author, feelings that come without an invitation, and memories that fade without our permission. By letting go of the need to be a specific somebody, we stop the exhausting work of defending a fortress that has no one inside to protect. This is not a loss of personality or a descent into a state of nothingness, but rather a release from the narrow confines of the egoic mind. Think about the amount of energy we spend every day worrying about how we are perceived by people who are themselves preoccupied with their own reflections. When we see through the illusion of the self, we see that there is no target for the arrows of criticism to hit. There is no one to be offended, no one to be humiliated, and no one to fail. This realization allows us to engage with the world with a sense of humor and lightness that was previously impossible. We can participate in life fully, performing our roles as parents, workers, and citizens with total dedication, while knowing deep down that these are just roles we are playing in a much larger and more mysterious drama. The suffering of the modern age is largely a suffering of attachment to the story of me. By deconstructing this story through critical reflection and lived experience, we find that the space we thought was occupied by a self is actually filled with an infinite potential for connection and awareness. We are no longer isolated islands in a hostile sea, but waves that are inseparable from the ocean itself. This shift from a self-centered perspective to a life-centered perspective is the ultimate act of rebellion against a culture that profits from our feelings of inadequacy and separation. As we begin to apply this awareness of non-self to our daily lives, we notice a remarkable transformation in our relationships and our work. Most conflicts in our personal lives arise because two egos are bumping into each other, each trying to prove its own rightness or protect its own fragile sense of importance. When we approach another person with the understanding of Anatta, we no longer see them as a threat to our identity or a tool for our own satisfaction. We see them as a fellow traveler experiencing the same flow of sensations and thoughts that we are, and this naturally gives rise to a deep and effortless compassion. This is the true meaning of interconnectedness, where the boundaries between self and other begin to dissolve into a shared field of being. In our professional lives, the practice of being no self allows us to enter a state of flow where the work happens through us rather than being forced by us. When the ego is not constantly checking to see if it is getting enough credit or if it is doing better than its peers, the mind becomes incredibly sharp, focused, and creative. We can face failure without being destroyed by it because we recognize that a setback in a project is not a setback for our fundamental being. We can also face success without being intoxicated by it, knowing that achievement is the result of 1,000 different causes and conditions rather than the sole work of a brilliant individual. This groundedness creates a mind that is unshakable in the face of the inevitable ups and downs of existence. We become like a mountain that remains still while the clouds of praise and blame pass by its peak. This is not a state of indifference or coldness, but a state of warm and vibrant presence that is fully engaged with the needs of the moment. When we are no longer preoccupied with our own internal drama, we have more energy to listen deeply to others, to solve problems with clarity, and to contribute to the well-being of our community. We find that the more we let go of the self, the more we find a capacity for love that is not based on possession or need. This is the true self that the Buddha spoke of indirectly, the self that is not a thing but a vast and open awareness that can hold all of life with kindness and equanimity. It is a resilience that does not come from making the ego stronger, but from making it more transparent so that the light of reality can shine through without obstruction. By practicing mindfulness in every action, from washing the dishes to having a difficult conversation, we reinforce the realization that there is no doer, only the doing. This is the path to a peace that surpasses all understanding. A peace that is available to us in every breath if we only have the courage to see through the illusion of who we think we are. The journey toward understanding the nature of non-self is not a destination we reach through intellectual effort alone, but a lived truth that unfolds in the quiet spaces between our thoughts. It is a return to our natural state before the world told us who we should be and before our ancient instincts built a wall around our hearts. As you move forward from this moment, carry this wisdom not as a heavy doctrine, but as a light that clarifies your path. Whenever you feel the weight of stress, anger, or fear, ask yourself, who is the one feeling this, and look closely for that person. In the absence of a solid self, you will find a profound and radiant stillness that has been with you all along. Trust in this awareness, and let it guide you toward a life of true freedom and compassion for all beings.